Meet Mattel's gender-neutral doll. In other words, a gender-confused chimera. How do you create a gender-fluid or gender-confused doll without starting with the reality of male and female? Folks, they are admitting to you when they make these dolls, when the anti-whites hold these dolls up as beautiful or wonderful creations, they are admitting to you that male and female are what is real. But with their effort, they can produce these chimeras of neither. Not both, but neither. They admit to you that both exist. And in fact, in an interview on this, a video interview on this same page, they say, the designers, well, we took some male features and female features. What is this just like? This is just like the anti-whites who say, and Mattel is doing the same thing with its dolls, trying to create raceless dolls. They admit that there is a white race when they say there isn't one, when they say that, well, when I look at people, sometimes they look a little white. Sometimes they look mostly white, depending on where I am. Like this guy who interviewed Jared Taylor. How can someone look a little white or mostly white if there isn't a white race? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the ultimate reveal. This is what most others are not going to be able to supply you with when it comes to these sorts of discussions. The anti-whites absolutely pull the curtain on what they believe and reveal to you what they believe and their objective. They believe that there are races. They just don't want there to be a white race. They believe that there are male and female. They just don't want there to be a male and female white race. The harm that is caused to these other groups, this is just collateral damage. They'll survive. Their genes are dominant. Those groups will continue. Only our group will be white erased from planet Earth with this gender confusion that's being inflicted on the children. If you don't know what gender you are, there's very few things you're going to be able to figure out in this world. That should be pretty obvious. And so wouldn't this be great if you had an enemy people, if you had a people you wanted to victimize? Wouldn't it be something to really diversify that population so that they were at each other's throats, they couldn't resist you, and then to confuse their children so that they wouldn't even know what sex they were or what they wanted to have sex with? Maybe they want to put on a costume 1 week and be a beetle and have sex with other beetles, and then the week after. I mean, this is a population that is so ripe for rolling right over and taking everything that was their inheritance away from them. This should be obvious to everyone. An 8-year-old who considers himself gender fluid, 8-year-old. How could an 8-year-old consider himself gender fluid? This is sickness. Everywhere you look, children are being introduced to the public to prepare the public for ideas of pederasty being legitimate, and you will see it, I guarantee you, in the coming years. So an 8-year-old who considers himself gender fluid and whose favorite color is black 1 week, pink the next. She sometimes plays with his younger sister's dolls at home, but they are, quote, girly princess stuff, he says dismissively. So was that his actual sentiment coming through there? Was that not this mother? Could you imagine a mother and father? If you all have a poor memory of those early years, then just disregard what I'm about to say. But could you imagine being a youngster and having an adult who is God to you, who is effectively God, leaning over and encouraging you to behave in a way that is unnatural for you, in a behavior that doesn't seem right for you? Now, they have done these studies. Trust me, the anti-whites have been pushing for this a very long time. And they have done this in study after study where they give little girls trucks and they give little boys dolls. And what happens every single time? The little girls wrap blankets around the trucks and they become baby trucks that they nurture. The little boys turn the dolls into soldiers. But what if you had, instead of just allowing the children to become what they naturally are, what if you had adults sitting beside you, gods sitting beside you saying, don't you want to nurse the doll, Johnny? Don't you want to give it love? What's wrong with you, Johnny? Don't you want to coddle it? Don't you want to put on this little pink tutu and prance around the room? It'll be so much fun. Could you imagine if you had an adult telling you that from this early age? This is the kind of sick child abuse that is going on in these cases. This is not Mattel responding to a market demand. This is Mattel brainwashing for the purpose of inflicting harm on white children. These are meme pathogens, ladies and gentlemen. Mattel doesn't just make dolls. Mattel makes a wide range of toys to get at your children with this garbage, with this infliction, with this of harm, with this child abuse on our children. No, Mattel should be taken to task by a healthy white government. The people who are behind this at Mattel should be brought up on charges for the harm that they are doing to generations, to countless numbers of children. The company is betting on where it thinks the country is going, even if it means alienating a substantial portion of the population. Listen to that. With this overt nod to these tiny communities, the company is betting on where it thinks the country is going. This is the lie always from the anti-whites, that no, we're just following the lead of where the country is going. And then you have these asses out there, these actual asses, because that's the orifice from which they speak, who say, no, they're not leading. No, they're not polluting. They're not corrupting. They're not desecrating. They're just going where everyone else wants to go. They're just following because that's where the profit is. Really, the profit is in this tiny 0.000 something of a percent of the population. That's where the profit is. And they're saying, even though they know it will alienate a substantial portion of the population, they know damn well and good what they're doing. They know damn well and good they're pushing this on the population rather than betting on this is where the population is going. Nothing could be more obvious. You would have to be an absolute fool. A Pew Research survey conducted in 2017 showed that while 70% of the public supports parents steering girls to toys and activities traditionally associated with boys, where did they get this? Remember, all of these studies are absolute lies. They always say what the entity who's paying for the study wants it to say. They never say the opposite of the person who's paying. Carefully manicured features betray no obvious gender. The lips are not too full, the eyelashes not too long and fluttery, the jaw not too wide. There are no Barbie-like breasts or broad kin-like shoulders. Again, telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that there is male, there is female, but they have the power and the sickness to mesh the two into a chimerical monster that they are going to push onto your children, and they're going to teach your children is normal and then desirable, as long as they're white, normal and desirable for the children, because here is the doll that will make it so. Here is the board game that Mattel will produce. Here is the video game that if they're not already producing, they will produce. Here are the backpacks. Here are the block sets, etc., that have pictures painted on them of these raceless, sexless chimeras to confuse your children, to make them unaware of who they are. And do you think, excuse me, do you think they'll ever be able to make it back from those mistakes? How many of these little Shias are going to be able to come back when they finally get to 15 or 16 and discover there that, wait a second, I'm really a male and I want to be a man? Or maybe 24 or 25 before they finally realize. How many of them are going to lead successful lives after that sort of child abuse? Virtually zero. They are not going to be able to recover from the humiliation, the malformation of their brains. Remember, particularly in the youth, the physical structure of the brain is being formed. It is actually taking a particular shape. They are not even going to be able to think sane thoughts as a consequence of this manipulation, this malformation, this scorching and burning of the entire tapestry of their brains. Who will make it back from this, for God's sakes? Very few, I submit to you. Each doll in the Creatable World series, and doesn't that tell you something? The name here, even the Creatable World. The Creatable World. These things don't exist in society, but we're going to make them in fantasy and then set them up for the white children to worship and to adore and to want to be like, therefore. Watch for these cartoons. If they're not already out there, they will be out there, where it's going to be the raceless, sexless heroes taking on the German accented or Southern accented or English accented light-featured villains. And if there are any non-whites working on the villain side, it'll be because they were forcibly pressed into service by these evil white villains and these heretical white villains, not anti-white enough, and or these non-whites will have some sort of terrible backstory where they were abused by whites, and now they want to abuse their own kind. This is how the anti-whites work, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? The World Series looks like a slender 7-year-old boy with short hair, but each comes with a wig of long, lustrous locks and a wardrobe befitting any fashion-conscious kid. Fashion-conscious kid. Fashion-conscious kid. Because that is what is important. Are you going to wear, according to this, hoodies, sneaker, a graphic t-shirt in soothing greens and yellows, along with tutus? I'm not making this up. Along with tutus and camo pants. Won't that be a great way for our people to defend Western civilization, this grand inheritance, this grand dignity, in camo pants and pink tutus? What a gaggle of heroes that will be. What will they be able to defend? How much strength will they have? They won't be able to fight their way out of wet paper bags, ladies and gentlemen. And that is exactly how those who intend to inflict harm on us want them to be. These effete scumbags, confused as the day is long about what gender they are, for God's sake. We didn't build Western civilization with men who were confused about whether or not they were men. We didn't have young men, we didn't have little boys look around their environment and say, am I a little girl? We didn't have mothers or sick fathers or teachers or what have you coming to them saying, you might just be actually a little girl. No, we had adults that nurtured their biospiritual instincts to be heroes of our people. And they became heroes of our people. They stood on that line at Thermopylae. They stood in so many other places where they had to fight. Sometimes it meant literal battlefields. Sometimes it meant, like now, oratorical battlefields. Sometimes it meant curing a disease or creating a work of art that is so beautiful, as I said on an IG post the other day, that we create such beauty that it could walk on water. Maybe that's what it's been. But they embraced who and what they are. And the same thing for our little girls. God bless every one of them as well. Nobody said to them, maybe you're actually a half man. Maybe even though you'll never be as strong, even though you'll never have the same endurance as a man, and this is manifested by competitive sports, of course, maybe you'll be none of those. Maybe instead of doing what a man can't do, maybe you'll be some sort of simulacrum of a man. You'll be some sort of demi-man instead. What a grotesque thing to set for a goal for a little girl. What a despicable and grotesque path to put one of our little angels on. And the little boys, those little angels who end up in one shape or another, whether metaphorical or real, donning the gear of combat and heading out there to ensure that our civilizations are broadened and deepened and made more glorious than they were by the generations preceding them, we will come to that beautiful realization once again. And there will be men, there are men today, and they will join those who are standing with me and Jared George and Poseidon and the others. They will join us shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, spear by spear against those who will inflict harm on Western civilization. And there won't be any more of this child abuse.